what we're seeing in the field is that the labor that is being employed now is mostly subcontract labor. And there's just a disconnect between the details, maybe new innovations that the manufacturer might have, or different processes of installation.
How different it is when you say something in the office versus it translating to the field, and how much that does get lost, even in the distribution of building products, not just even in the field. To going from manufacturer to distributor, there's just a lot of things that can happen and go wrong. It's like that game of telephone, you know?
As Mark said earlier, there's a lot of disconnect between the contractor's office staff and the actual crews that are installing the work. So important to have good supervision.
Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Couch. This is the spot where leaders talk about the stories, strategies, and systems that win in the building industry. We unpack how leaders and brands build their reputations and become unmistakable. Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Couch, and today I'm coming to you live from Grit Studios. And I'm here actually my first time ever interviewing two guests at once. So thank you for joining me, Mark and Jeff from Fortress Building Envelope Consultants. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And we are talking a lot about some of the things that y'all are seeing in the market. You guys do something called building envelope testing and consulting. You work with a lot of different industry parts, architects, you work with attorneys, you work with GCs, all different parts of the industry. But for those who maybe don't know, what is a building envelope and what does a building envelope consultant do? Okay, tell me, what is the building envelope?
The building envelope is code for what we consider the wrap of the building. It usually consists of roofing, walls, fenestrations, waterproofing, basically anything that keeps water out of the structure.
Okay. And what does a building envelope consultant do? So what do you guys do here at Fortress?
Pretty much we are looking at every aspect from the below grade waterproofing up to the roof in terms of details, damage, and its integrity.
Yeah, and y'all have a roofing background. So y'all have both been in the commercial roofing space for, 3 decades, a long time of experience of seeing these jobs, working on these jobs, quoting these jobs. And you guys were talking to me earlier, something that kind of struck me a little bit is you're thinking about the roof and the waterproofing on a building. So many people touch that throughout the building construction, which wasn't really something I thought about a lot, because you're putting that down and then other trades are touching it, working with it, could be messing it up. And you guys are going out and you're testing those products to make sure they're still good to go. So tell me a little bit about how you work with people, because a lot of people I don't think know all of the amazing things that could happen on a roof and how you're testing it to make sure that they don't go wrong.
Well, many times both during and after construction, roofing, waterproofing, even the walls and other fenestrations of the building envelope, while they're being installed and after installation, other trades can use those as a platform to install their process, use it to store materials, access to the job site, those type of things. A lot of them incur damage as a result of those processes. And unfortunately, that allows water into the systems. It can be detrimental both from a short-term and a long-term effect on the building.
Yeah, Mark, we were talking earlier about the importance of communication on the job site. You actually were building and doing roofs for a long time. You were talking about pre-roofing communication meetings. So tell me, what does that mean, and how do you think that could actually help problems not happen if you had upfront conversations?
Those meetings are so important. Once you get the meeting going, you make sure that you have everybody that's going to touch that roof or that waterproofing system is in that meeting, and that we're all communicating on what kind of protection that they're going to use. And once the system's in place, and how important it is that they protect it as they're doing their own work, and to protect that trade's work, because it's the last protection before water gets into the building.
Yeah, you were talking about something small like an HVAC person, or somebody leaving some screws on the roof, somebody else steps on the screws, goes into the waterproofing, not waterproofing anymore all the way, it starts to leak. 10 years down the road, that could be a problem. That's all because one person left some screws on the roof. I would have never have thought about it that, in the minutia, that little thing can really make a huge problem.
That's correct. I mean, and a lot of times those meetings that we'll have, I mean, it's not a finger pointing contest or anything like that, but a lot of times those guys in the field they know if they've punctured the roof or anything like that. Sometimes they're reticent to say anything because they might get in trouble or whatever. But we try to mitigate that with the communication up front, and that things happen. And if it's punctured, the best thing to do is raise your hand and I put a hole in the roof, and that you can get that trade over there to patch it as soon as possible before we have any damage to the roof system or the interior of the structure.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of water can do a lot of damage very quickly.
Correct.
When you're talking about some of the work that you guys do, I know you have different types of clients. What type of people are you getting that are calling you to do this type of inspection or testing, or what all are you guys doing for people?
A lot of our work is for attorneys doing what we call forensic or legal construction defect work. But we also work for contractors doing in-field testing, some quality assurance type services. We also work for building owners and some manufacturers with inspections, assessments, things of that nature.
What type of testing? I know there is some testing that, you have to do, like it's specified in the architectural drawings and when the building's designed, but what type of testing are you doing?
It varies from, we do a lot of what's called ELD, stands for electronic leak detection. That's mostly on roofing and waterproofing. We have different apparatuses where we can elicit a electrical charge to the roof or the waterproofing membrane and scan the roof or waterproofing with different type of tools to find holes, voids, damage, those kind of defects that mostly cause from the construction process. We also do a lot of what we call wall testing. The window test would often call the negative chamber pressure test, which the ASTM E1105, and the nozzle test to find out water infiltration within the windows or the storefront type systems, as well as we do a fair amount of infrared, using an infrared camera to do scans of walls and roofs, and pull tests and several other applications.
When you guys work with attorneys and your expert witnesses, what are you doing are you going out to jobs to help them get things for their cases, or like what kind of work are you doing for attorneys?
Most of it is good for construction defects. Oftentimes that does result in visiting the project site, maybe some destructive type testing to figure out what went wrong. A lot of it's visual or observation or kind of a fact gathering missions. And some of the legal work is just reviewing their documents to see, was there a breakdown in communication? Were the wrong type systems used, incorrect materials, or a lot of it just boils down to just poor workmanship in the field.
Mark, talking about the things you see and what's actually happening, we talked a lot about the skills trades gaps, and there's a lot of statistics around that. I think the latest number is like we need 300,000 to 400,000 jobs just this year to fill whatever work needs to be done in the construction industry overall. How do you see that this skills trades gaps is making people have more construction problems? And, what do you think could actually be done to fix that?
Well, I think the subcontractors that are putting the work in have got to employ more quality assurance, either, mostly in terms of supervision. What we're seeing in the field is that there's just the labor that is being employed now is mostly subcontract labor. And then there's a bit of a disconnect. In the old days, you would have a lot of manufacturers could come in and do training sessions with the roofers and their field employees. And now that they're subcontracting that labor, there's a disconnect between that manufacturer and the subcontractors, because the subcontractors don't have that connection to the manufacturer. I mean, they're working directly for the roofer.
Yeah.
Or the waterproofer. And there's just a disconnect between the details, maybe new innovations that the manufacturer might have, or different processes of installation. And it's just not being communicated to the field employees.
Yep.
We see a lot of language barrier as well, both in communication and understanding of plans and specifications. Unfortunately, what we see a lot in the field is this is the way we were taught, or this is the way we did it on the last job, and that manifests in future problems.
Do you have some stories about some of the things you've seen on jobs where people just aren't following directions?
One of our favorite sayings that we go on a job site and speak with contractors, we get this statement all the time, quote unquote, "I've been doing it this way for 25 years."
Yeah.
We had a project that was actually a shingle installation that was incorrectly, the flasher was incorrectly done. When I met the contractor on site, they professed that this is the way they've done it. And when I showed them this step flashing was not done per manufacturers and industry standards, their immediate question, well, where do I find this information out? I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
I simply walked over, unwrapped a bundle of shingles right there on the roof, and there were the instructions, printed out right in front of their face, something they would see.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I feel like manufacturers generally do a pretty good job of covering themselves and helping people know what should be done, how to use the products, what matters, what doesn't, even what warranties cover and things like that. But I don't think most people pay very much attention to that. You said earlier, you were talking about manufacturer trainings. Do you think that is a solution to this problem? Is like, hey, if the skilled trades aren't experienced, but even if they are, they maybe aren't doing it the right way. Manufacturers could do more trainings to be able to get them to pay attention. Do you think they will pay attention?
If they would just employ getting the manufacturer and the subs on the same page, and then, part of our tagline of our company is inspecting what you're expecting.
Yeah.
And I think every trade should do that same thing. I mean, just because you told the man in the field what to do and how to do it, you need to go inspect it and make sure he did just exactly what you expected him to do.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about how different it is when you say something in the office versus it translating to the field and how much that does get lost. And I think there is a lot of that, even in the distribution of building products, not just even in the field, to going from manufacturer to distributor to contractor or whoever's touching it in the field. There's just a lot of things that can happen and go wrong. It's like that game of telephone, and it hardly ever gets back the exact same way. So there is a lot of vigilance that has to happen. And we're all so busy. I think that does get lost a lot, and even lost in translation, like you said, between people that have been doing it one way. They think they're doing it the right way.
As Mark said earlier, there's a lot of disconnect between the contractor's office staff and the actual crews that are installing the work. So important to have good supervision, get the project started off in the right manner, making sure that everybody's on par with what's expected, what the manufacturer is calling for, what the specifications call for, the details of plans shown. We're big believers in having mock-ups on job sites. We just have a project that's in litigation right now where the plans and specs call for a mock-up, the contractor skipped that process, the mason installs a lot of the brick in an incorrect manner, and it mushroomed into a major lawsuit, something that a mock-up and better communication could have certainly avoided that issue.
Mark, you were telling me about a really large job that you guys had, and that job has actually been under construction for over 2 years. And then you were talking about how eventually something else gets put on top of that substrate, the roofing, the waterproofing, whatever it was. Why is it so important that they make sure and test before they do that?
One of the largest expenses, if there is a leak in the future, is the removal of all the overburden. And this particular project has an enormous amount of terraces, and all of those terraces, it's a waterproofing system, so it gets covered with insulation, a root barrier, insulation, and then whatever overburden they're going to put. Either it's going to be pavers, or it's going to be a green roof, which is a lot of soil or growing media, as they want to call it, and then plants. If they have a leak in the future, the immense amount of labor it takes to remove all of that stuff to actually find where their leak problem is enormous. And so the idea is that once we have all the trades off of that roof, all the equipment off the roof, and we're ready to install overburden, we make the test, make sure all the repairs are made, and then they can proceed. But if it's missed, if the testing part is missed and they do have an issue later, it'll be quite expensive.
Yeah.
Even on roofs that don't have overburden, your standard commercial type roof, if you have leaks due to damage or holes or any other reason, water can infiltrate the roof system. You have a loss of R value in your insulation. Leaks can obviously do interior damage, microbial growth within both the roof assembly or in the interior, which obviously is the old dreaded M word that nobody wants to say. Yeah. But so testing it, as Mark said beforehand, can eliminate so many of those issues, both for the short term and the long term life of the system.
Yeah, a little bit of water and a lot of time is usually not a good thing in a building. So, right. And if you don't know it's leaking and it's behind a wall for years and years, it can be very, very bad.
Even AIA has published a paper for the past 10 years. Water intrusion is the number one construction litigation in our industry.
Wow.
I believe, according to their data, it's been 70% of all lawsuits are as a result of water migration into the building.
Wow. That's a big portion of the lawsuits.
Yes, it is.
And you guys actually are seeing some things now from COVID was a time unlike any other. I've been in the industry a long time. You guys have been too. People couldn't get the materials they had always been using. They couldn't get the windows they liked, the doors they liked, the substrates they liked, the roofing they liked. So they started using different products out of necessity. The labor pool started to get, a lot more ballooned with people who had never done things before. They're doing roofs they've never roofed before. They're putting in windows they've never done that before. Are you seeing effects from that? Because it's now been 5 years really since a lot of that has happened, maybe 6 in some cases. What's happening with litigation on that side of things now that those effects are coming to fruition?
I believe that the material shortages, and while today we've kind of mitigated that, everyone could get the proper material now, but there was a good 2-year period where there were substitutions. There were start and stop delays in a lot of construction projects. That resulted in different crews coming in to start the work and maybe a different crew finishing. Some of the products being exposed to weather longer than they should have, those types of instances. And we're seeing now a little bit more of the effects of that and long-term ill effects of the building of water intrusion that's the result of poor practices back then or poor material selection, poor labor. Sometimes leaks in a building, whether it's roof or walls, sometimes they occur immediately and they could see them within just a few months. Other times they leak for years before someone exposes that or they expose themselves, only to find now that we've got serious damage. So as time goes by, we're seeing more and more litigation that's going to happen as a result of those.
An example of that was we had a recent project that they had material shortage. They couldn't get the correct roof insulation in time. And it got to a point where it wasn't a matter of cost because the materials were being escalated daily. I mean, they just couldn't get them. And if you could get them, the price was going through the roof. So they were looking for other options. And so this particular structure, it was a wood structure, apartment building, and then the insulation was specified to be above deck, and they couldn't get it. So what else could we do? Well, the designer of record decided to use bad insulation underneath the deck to insulate it. Well, what that did was it moved the dew point. And now water is condensating on the underside of the membrane and then coming back, and it destroyed the framing of the building.
Wow.
And it created a lot of microbial growth on the upper floors of the building, and they ended up having to do they had to tear them off. They had to tear them off to the deck, and a lot of deck had to be replaced. A lot of structural members had to be reinforced, affected the tenants of the building as well.
Yeah.
The entire top floor had to be vacated.
Wow.
While this work went on. So.
Yeah, and that sucks because in that case, that wasn't anybody's wrongdoing. Like no one did cut any corners or anything. They tried to do the right thing and they just couldn't get the product. And I do think you guys are right. I think that's going to happen a lot more because it is going to take some time for some of these problems to show themselves. And I do think there's probably a lot of really shortcutted work that happened, unfortunately, because of the demand and because of the lack of products during those years, 2020 to probably 23, I guess. And it's going to come back to roost for sure. Well, if someone wants to work with you guys, an attorney's working a case, they need an expert witness, or maybe a manufacturer needs testing done, or someone needs testing done, how do they contact you, and how do you work with people?
They can always contact us via email or phone call.
Okay.
Both of those on our website. And we're pretty upfront about what our services are and our cost. For the testing, it varies for the day or for the week, those type of, it's all job specific. For attorneys, it's usually more of a hourly basis.
Yeah, and you guys travel, right, to go test?
We do.
You're out of North Carolina, but you travel.
Correct. Mark's in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. I'm in the Greenville, South Carolina area. But I think we were at 27 states last year. And
wow.
We've been as far as Alaska. Even had a case that we reviewed in Hawaii. So we travel wherever it's necessary.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast today, guys. And if you're interested in chatting with these guys, we will link all of their information in the bio here. So thank you for joining us on this episode of the Grit Blueprint, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Grit Blueprint podcast. If this episode helped you think a little differently about how to show up, share it with someone in your building world who needs it. If you're ready to turn visibility into growth, then head to gritblueprint.com to learn more and book a call to talk to us about your growth strategy. Until next time, stay unmistakable.